I got to say, I love the concept. You're doing a great service to this industry, so I'm super excited to be here.
Creating a podcast video series that focuses on the amazing stories within our space. Hey, contact center, customer experience friends. Welcome to episode 8 of Origins and Journeys. Today, our special guest is the one and only Gary Pudles. If you don't know who Gary is, he's the president and CEO of Answernet and a serial entrepreneur. So Gary has done 75 acquisitions. Is that 75 right now, or have you added one?
At least, probably more.
Probably more? Okay. Well, 75, 80, who knows? Who's counting? So you grew your company to over 100 million in revenue through organic, through acquisitions. Gary also happens to be the guy that I kind of use as my thermometer when I'm unsure about, things in business life. We talk a lot. He's one of the guys that I call when, I need to bounce stuff off of. Trusted resource for me and a great friend. Gary, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And more importantly, thank you for that. That was really a kind introduction. Fred, I consider you a dear friend, and to suggest that I'm a guy that you trust enough to talk to about important things really means a lot to me. So thank you, Fred, and I'm really excited to be here.
No, a little bro love here. I appreciate it. There's not a lot of people. I think we all spend a lot of time in life meeting and greeting and shaking hands, but there are some people that you just naturally gravitate towards. And I always appreciate all those relationships, and you're obviously one of them. So
remember when we met in your TouchStar days?
Oh yeah, absolutely. 20 years, man. Anyways, all right. So as always, the intent of Origins and Journeys is to inspire the next generation of contact center and customer experience professionals. And we do it the best way we know how, through telling stories. Stories of people like Gary, like ourselves, like our other guests who came up through the industry in various different ways and built a life, a career, and a really passionate about, what they do in this industry. And we've all met entrepreneurs, executives, leaders in this industry who started out as agents on the phone, who built a path and have become very successful. And that's really what we're trying to show is there's a ton of opportunity in this space. You just need to put in the work. And if you want to build a career and a life, this is a great launching point. So the only thing we ask is subscribe, follow our content. There'll never be any sales pitches on O&J. We're not here to sling products. We're just simply here to inspire the next generation. So without further ado, Mr. Pudles, tell us, how'd you get into this crazy space?
Well, let me start briefly by making the statement that I've always considered myself kind of the slumdog millionaire of call center services. And what I mean by that is I had an amazing career up until the time I got into the space that gave me the tools to see the kinds of opportunities that I've been able to see over the years. So I was a lawyer. I ran a business called Muzak for 5.5 years. And so in that world, I learned about satellite communications. I learned about telephone communications. I learned about how data worked. So as many of us know, that is the core of being in the contact center space. From there, I was with a team that won a pioneer preference from the FCC. And there I was, a lawyer in the engineering department, trying to explain to engineers why they wanted to put up a monopole in the middle of an osprey farm. You just can't do it, even though the coverage would be superb. And we, all of us from that team that built the first PCS network, were all recruited out. And I was recruited out to a company in Philadelphia that was doing, I went from the buy side, from the carrier side to the landlord side. So now I'm getting facility management. I mean, if you think about this, right? And I was managing people from the Muzak days all the way through. So if you think about it, all of the main tools that you need to be a contact center executive, I got from all these different experiences.
Right.
So I moved to Philadelphia for a job, and I just don't fit. It was a cultural mismatch for me. And, it was one of the few times in my career where I was struggling to get up in the morning and go to work. Mm-hmm. And one of the things about me is I'm a happiness guy. I really believe that being happy is the most important thing we can do in our lives. It's not a dress rehearsal. We got to get it done. So first I started meeting a dear friend of mine who was a teacher down at Morton. And I started meeting her once a week at a coffee shop here in Philadelphia to try and find my next thing. Mm-hmm. But ultimately what I did was I wrote down all the things that I liked and all the things that I didn't like in a business, and I went on the internet to find a business to buy. What a lot of people don't know is when you reach a crossroads in your life, you don't have to start a new business with no revenue, with a classic idea. What you need to do is figure out a way, at least what I needed to do, because I had a wife and 2 children, I needed a way to turn my savings into cash flow. Mm-hmm. And I needed to make sure that I used my skills not to mess it up, whatever business that was. Like I remember turning to my ex-wife and saying, there's this franchise for preschools. And I had to pick her up from the floor when she said, I could just see you every day going to work, taking care of children. She said, Don't ever tell me about that again. And so ultimately, I started doing, as I said, it was a cultural mismatch for me. So I started, looking for businesses, having these meetings. And I found a business, different industry, and I did a term sheet. Now, the day I did the term sheet, I faxed the term sheet to the seller. I called the seller, fax him the term sheet. I go back to my office. He calls me back. He says, I'm faxing the term sheet back. I said, because I told him I didn't want the fax to come back to the office. So I go back, I hang up. And as soon as I hang up, the CEO's assistant called and told me the CEO wants me in his office. So I walk over to the fax machine. I pick up my signed letter of intent, and I walk into the CEO's office. On the CEO's desk is the cover sheet of my term sheet, because it turns out somebody turned on the copy of the front page on the fax machine. And now the question I've always asked is, did I get fired that day or did I quit? Because I now had a term sheet. I'll just say that when the deal didn't work out, I wound up collecting unemployment. So that should tell you what happened. Yeah. Anyway, and you can't collect unemployment if you quit. So, so they weren't any more pleased with this cultural fit than I was. Yeah. Anyway, the next day I go in, I have my term sheet, and as expected, all the things in the book that they had given me were not true. So there I was in January of 98. I had a wife, 2 kids, a mortgage, no job, and no company. So back to the internet I went. And again, what most people don't know is truly hundreds of thousands of businesses of all sizes are out there. And what happens today, I'm 2 years younger than me is the end of the baby boom generation. Mm-hmm. People have built wonderful businesses with great cash flow that their kids don't want because they're not cool. They're not sexy. So I ultimately found the telephone answering service business. So unlike many of my peers, I got into this. There were 3 telephone answering services that were for sale within an hour of my house. And I had never worked in the business, but it had all of the things that I really liked. Number 1 was recurring revenue. Mm-hmm. Number 2 was people management. Mm-hmm. Number 3 was communications technology. And number 4 was business to business selling and business to business. I didn't want to sell to consumers. I didn't want to be around. I could never do, when I was even in practice, I didn't want to do matrimonial law. I didn't want to do PI. I didn't want to be around people who were suffering the hardest parts of their lives. I wanted to be around people that would have a better chance of being happy, and people who are being successful at work are happy. The other thing that really blew me away was that 4.5% of the U.S. population worked in a call center. So I figured, as long as I wasn't a total butthead and I messed up, I would have, these businesses were fairly consistent. The answering service business, which is often disregarded because the numbers are smaller than the bigger call center business, is actually one of the steadiest, most long-term businesses. And it was very interesting because the Muzak franchise that I worked for originally was owned by a radio station, and they would get a $10,000 contract for advertising, or they'd get a $30 a month Muzak contract, not realizing that same $30 Muzak contract, the average length of that client was 30 years. I still have clients from that original customer list that I bought ultimately in '98. So what happens? I put together a business plan and I go to get funding for the business plan. And there's 3 within an hour of my house. And I wind up working with a bank that had actually funded Telespectrum. The banker that I met, so Telespectrum, as many people know, was a firm here in Philadelphia. The banker that I got connected to, luckily, was the same banker who helped Telespectrum launch. So I found one of the few banks who understood cash flow lending. So those people who don't understand cash flow lending, we don't have a lot of assets. And now that more of our technology is in the cloud, we even have less assets that we can borrow against and fund against. But I found a bank that understood that. Anyway, I did my business plan, and the deal I cut was I was actually going to be a subsidiary of the bank. And I was going to work for this really, really neat lady who I've gotten to become very good friends with over the years, who's very well known in the industry, a woman named Claudia Timbo. And I was going to actually work for Claudia as a subsidiary because she already was a co-owner and an operating partner with the bank in a more traditional call center. So as I do that, I said, I better learn about this industry I'm trying to buy into. So there was this little magazine out there called Connections Magazine, which still exists. And I started reading about the industry, learning about the industry. And sort of 2 really funny things happened. First of all, there was an article about this guy whose office was around the corner of one of my 3 targets. And it said he had been in the industry, he liked entrepreneurial people. And I'm like, okay, I'm an entrepreneurial people. So I call and I make an appointment to go meet with him. And my goal is to raise money from him, and maybe I can get him to help me fund, because I was like any young entrepreneur. I was in my 30s at the time. My goal is to put up a little bit of money and then keep as much equity as I could, but build a company and with other people's money. Well, so I went and I pitched him. This guy turned out to be one of the smartest people I ever met from a financial point of view. Didn't know it. And I made him sign a confidentiality agreement. And I walk in the office and the first thing he goes is, "Oh, you're the guy trying to buy Sandy." What I later learned is the guy who was the biggest of the 3 targets was his partner in some real estate deals. So I wasn't being, he knew exactly who I was. He knew exactly what my goal was, et cetera. And in the middle of the conversation, he goes, "By the way, you didn't negotiate a great deal. Why don't you come and do something with me?" And I thought he was offering me a job. And I said, "No, I don't want a job. I want to do my own thing. It's really part of my passion." So I said, "Look, here's what I'll do. I'm going to finish this deal. I'm going to close this deal with Sandy. And when I'm done, you're right around the corner. I'm going to come and talk to you." Well, this is 1998. Sandy had 1 fax machine between his 4 telephone answering service offices in the Philadelphia area. The way he did billing was they would count the number of pink slips. They would write it on a ledger card and mail the ledger card. So doing due diligence on that business was nearly impossible. And Sandy was really good at making a lot of money, but not always showing it. And I don't want to, he's now passed away, but I'm not trying to disparage the man. What I'm saying, though, is he was an old-time small business operator. So when that deal crashed and burned, I picked up the phone and called this guy. I said, "Listen, my deal didn't happen. I'm coming over because I'm going to shake the man's hand and say goodbye. And I'm hoping that maybe I can convince him to do a deal slightly differently. And after I'm done with that meeting, I'll come over and visit you. So I think, okay, because one of the things that happened was I promised my ex-wife that I would either have a company or a job by August 1st. Now, I had lost my job in January. It was now July, okay? And I had until August 1st to either get my company started or get a job. Yeah. And so third week of July, I go and meet this guy. It's a Thursday. Third week of July, I go and meet the guy, and he says, "Why don't you buy half of one of my companies?" And you could have floored me, okay? You could have knocked me over with a feather. I said, "Okay, I'm interested," and we talked about them. And he had an answering service in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and he said, "Well, my accounting department's gone." It was like 6:00 in the evening. So I'm going to fax you the numbers, come back on Saturday, and we'll see if there's a deal to be done. So he faxes me the next day the numbers for the Allentown office. I look at the numbers. I tell my ex-wife, if he says this number or better, I'm going to say yes. I don't know how I'm going to finance it or get it done, but I'm going to say yes. I go there that Saturday, and we have 2 minutes of small talk, and he says I said, "Okay, how much?" He said the exact highest price that I had in mind. I said, "That's a high price." He looked at me. He goes, "That's your cost of admission." That was a moment for me where I had to ask myself, do I believe in me? Am I willing to risk on me? Well, the answer was, yes, I'm going to do that deal, but here's the problem. I don't have that kind of money. He looks at me. He goes, "How much you have?" And I told him, how much I had in the bank. He said, "I'll take that and a note for more. And here's what changed my life." And he said, "And if you're not happy in 6 months, I'll give you your money back." There's a yellow piece of paper that's in my conference room. I hand wrote a yellow piece of paper contract, handed the man a check for my life savings, and said, "But here's the deal. Don't cash the check till Monday because there's no money in the account. I've got to fund the account." And that's exactly what I did. I funded the account Monday. And on top of that, so the office, the answering service was an hour north in Allentown, and his office was an hour east in Princeton, New Jersey. And he said he would incubate me and give me office space for free. So Monday morning, July 28th, 3 days before my deadline with my ex-wife, I walked in as the president of a company doing $50,000 a month with 20 employees. And having never worked in an answering service, there I was.
Gary, let me jump in. So I want to take it back because you started out as a lawyer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did.
Didn't you also work in debt collections at a point? Am I remembering that right?
You are. So the law firm, during law school, one of the law clerk jobs I did over the summer was at a collections law firm.
Yeah.
And which was also a collections agency. And then the first real legal job I got was at a collections law firm. Again, one of those insane little skills that made me able to handle collections of the answering service accounts. Because again, average answering service customer at that time was somewhere between $100 and $150 a month.
Right.
Which many people in the big call center business think I'm insane.
Yeah.
But it is a great business. It's still a great business.
Yeah. You just got to be able to manage the back end, and that takes all those skills. So you went from a lawyer into the collection side. You decided, this whole timing of your ex-wife telling you, either you're going to get a job or you're going to buy a business one way or another. You buy a business, you buy into an answering service, you don't know the industry, but you know how to lead people, you know the legal side, you obviously had the confidence in yourself.
And the technical side.
Yeah, and the telecom side. So you had all this experience wrapped up into one ball that just happened to find the right business model that absolutely fit and brought all those, 4 or 5 pillars that you mentioned. So this is actually a really good segue into what I really wanted to talk about when I knew I was going to finally get you on. When I want to talk to you about the art of the deal. And the reason I picked this is because you get a lot of stuff done. And a lot of people think about M&A in the way of big corporations gobbling each other up. And, it's a 1.5 year transition before you even see any brand changes. And, it's a painful process internally. But there's also another side of these deals, which is what you've done, which is really working with the smaller organizations. Let's call them mom and pop in your words. When a small organization buys up another small organization, and the art of that deal. And I want to dive into this, and I know Jason's going to love this section, but Artie and I are both, we've done plenty of deals ourselves. So, it's not like we're out here sitting quietly. So what I want to start out with is first, so when you first walk into any deal, what do you feel the most important thing you look for at the opening of the deal? And let's start with, we're talking about the acquisition piece, but for all of us, I think the art of the deal is the same. It just depends on the scale and the numbers that you're talking about. But the art of the deal is, I always come in looking for certain things. What are the things you look for in the opening of a deal? To get down, sit at the table. What are those factors you're looking for?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, so I'm going to do my best to, I get really excited about this stuff. So
I know you do.
I know, you trying to stop me from finishing that little last piece, but the art of the deal is exactly that. And I am going to finish it because I think it's an important piece that you'll enjoy. I got to buy my first company a week after I bought that 50% of that business from my partner. A week later, he walks into my office and says that one of his other partners, has a deal in Portland, Oregon. And if I can he ran out of money, and if I can put it together, the deal is mine. I had never been to Portland, Oregon, nor did I have any trips planned to Portland, Oregon. But I called the bank that I was going to work for. I was going to be partners with. I said, you're never going to believe what happened in the last 3 weeks. I closed my deal and I got the deal done. And I now have a company with a clean balance sheet because all the debt was me personally. And I have 3 years of financials on both the company that I now own and the company I'm acquiring. Will you finance it? 48 hours later, the bank approved a loan for $500,000, and my new partner, who is one of the most sophisticated numbers guy that I'd ever met, thinks I know how to do deals. Now, I had done some deals. I had done some deals as a lawyer. At Muzak, we rolled up everything. So when you ask in terms of doing acquisitions on small businesses, you start with number one. Does the seller really want to sell?
Yeah.
For many small businesses, this is going to be one of the most emotional decisions, life-changing decisions that they make. Many times the things that are so that number one is, do they really want to sell? And the way you know that is the deal priced at a level that makes you want to do the deal, right? When you're not venture-backed, when you're not PE-backed, you don't have to do deals, right? So I did take on, a 1.5 years later, we bought the biggest answering service company in the country at the time and became, for a very small period of time, the largest answering service company in the world. And I did bring on some PE. I had what's called an SBIC lender, Small Business Investment Corporation. Those are people who borrow from the SBA at one rate and loan that out for equity and interest at another rate. So I had these people in my business now. When I go into a deal, first question is, does the seller really want to sell?
Yeah.
And generally the motivation is, I'm getting up in age and it's time for me to take my chips off the table. My business is in trouble. I'm ready to retire and my kids don't want the business. Or, and some of the saddest, I'm going to sell it to you because I have an issue in my family. And I think by selling you the business that has kept this family going for so long, my family problems are going to go away. And I'm going to tell you a little secret. Very rarely is that the case. Yeah. In fact, it usually creates even more problems. So the first thing is, what's your motivation as the seller? What is the price of the deal? Because there's one thing that we all have that is the most precious thing in our lives, and that is time. Mm-hmm. We all have friends who are dead way before they should be, right? Time is the most important asset we have. And I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste the seller's time, okay? So I look at that. Number two, what is the industry they are in, and what are the general multiples of EBITDA? We buy and sell these businesses as a percentage of cash flow, not as a percentage of cash flow, as a number of cash flow. So it might be 2, 3, 4. When I got into the answering service business, they were selling these businesses for 3 to 10 times monthly revenue, which was a nice, 2 to 4 times EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Right. And coming out of the music business, we were selling them for 35 to 50 times monthly revenue, 7 and 8 times monthly EBITDA. I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Right. How could I not be successful? So the next thing is client concentration. Mm-hmm. The biggest problem in the big contact center business is client concentration. Yeah. And you want to make sure, I can't even tell you how many times somebody has said to me, oh, well, we have one client, but we have different lines of service. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you something. If you piss off the wrong person in that big client, you're going to lose all the lines of business. Doesn't matter how good you are. The other thing to remember is a lot of people have gotten in this business by working for a company, getting out of the company, and having their former subordinates who now have their job giving them business. And then they actually have to go out and sell to other people, and they don't know how to do it. Or they were a great operations person or a technical person. Like in the answering service, many of the people came out of the phone company pre-divestiture. What I actually own, I own what used to be called the Western Union Telephone Answering Service business, WUTAS. I own the old Answer America business. I own some of the most respected brands in answering service. Now, you don't see those brands anymore. Answer America, you see, that's a whole different thing. But you don't see those brands anymore because I bring them in to the big brand. The other business is, what industries are they in? What are their specialties? And more importantly, the big thing about doing deals in the contact center space is you really only need to understand 6 numbers in order to know in minutes whether you're going to do a deal. Right. Okay? You need to know what is their revenue. Because if it's not big enough, it's not going to make money no matter what you do. Mm-hmm. What percentage of the revenue goes to pay people, both at the operating level and the senior level? What is your technology cost? What is your real estate cost? And potentially, what is your sales and marketing cost? If you can manage those 5 numbers and you can understand those, not only can you see if you want to buy it, but you can see and come up with your operating strategy in 10 minutes. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those simple things that will let me know, how do I make profits, not in the future, but today. How do I make profits in those businesses?
Yeah. Nice. So I normally we go around the table. So, on the same question, in the kickoff of a deal, Artie, let's start out with you, and then we'll go to Jason because I really want to hear what he also has to say from the sales side perspective. But in the art of the deal, what do you look for when you're going in, whether you're selling a product, you're buying something, what do you go in and what are the things you look for at the start to know, all right, this is worth my time?
Yeah. Gary, you hit on some really good topics. I'll try to relate it to maybe some people in the audience who are in the contact center world. Maybe they're agents answering calls or making outbound sales. I'll give you a little history. So I've never been on the buying side. I've never acquired a company. I've been acquired. I'm a serial entrepreneurial. I've started companies and decided to sell them off and went through that whole process. And from being on the selling side, being acquired, someone coming to my business and saying, oh, that's a good idea. I like it. How much do you want for it? What I've noticed, and maybe Gary, you can touch on this in a little bit, is usually the buyer is buying from the person. The person is the most important aspect of that business. It's understanding who the human is who built it from scratch, or maybe the person who has had this company for the last X amount of years, we'll say 2 years, 10 years, whatever that is, and what makes that person special. What's their secret sauce? Their secret sauce to the Big Mac. Because anyone can make the Big Mac. It's what makes this business uniquely special, learning from them, understanding from them. Then, of course, making sure all the check boxes check financially. Is it the right financial move to acquire? Is it the market good? Is there a good multiple in the industry? Those are all very important things to do as well. But if you have that first meeting with that person and you're thinking about acquiring a company and they just rub you the wrong way, and I can't remember, I think it was a different podcast, like you'll know within a couple seconds whether or not you like someone or not. And if you just got that icky feeling, even if the money looks like it's great, you probably should walk away. Or you should, to Gary's point, not waste their time. You should basically say, hey, I'm no longer interested, or, if I were interested, I think it's not going to be interesting for us to continue the conversation on your side of the house because I'm going to lowball it or not turn your baby, your dream, your company into something that you're happy with long term. So I would say in the deal, if we could equate it back to someone who's answering phone calls or making outbound sales calls, remember that people always buy from people. The product that you're selling, it's got to be a product. It's got to have special features. It's got to be the right price. But really be personable, network. They have to understand a little bit about you before they commit, and vice versa, especially if you're selling something that's not just a commodity that you can buy off the shelf, something that requires a little bit extra empathy and compassion. If you're selling stuff, be a real person. If you're buying stuff, be a real person.
Artie, we could have a whole conversation about authenticity in both the sales process and in the deal process. And I had this conversation down at a conference in Nashville last week at Ep8 with somebody where they were making comments to me about, I don't know what I should be. And I said, I have an idea. Be yourself. Be the person you are. And the other big thing, you're right, people buy from people. They buy from people they like and people they trust, right? Why are Fred and I friends? I don't think we've done a whole bunch of business, but we like each other and we trust each other. And in this industry, there are a lot of people with situational ethics. I learned that from a dear friend of mine, Tim Searcy, who's now passed away. And Tim and I used to talk about those people in the industry who were very successful or not, but who had very serious situational ethics. I think that in any sale, moving back to what you're talking about, Artie, the key is for you to understand what is motivating that person. The understanding of what that person's goals are and being willing to focus not on your goal, on what you want, Fred warned me every single time we talked, this is not a sales pitch. Fred is not a sales pitch. So don't be selling your products, dude. But what is very true is, if you focus on any deal on helping somebody else achieve their dream, sales happen naturally. Life happens naturally. Success will happen. You'll have a higher likelihood of success because the common denominator of all successful people in any endeavor is that they make a habit of doing what unsuccessful people don't like to do. And a lot of people don't want to focus on somebody else's success. They're so wrapped up in their own success and what they want to achieve that they forget this. And both Fred and I have called on each other at different times in our career for advice without there being anything in it for either of us on either side.
Right.
That's what makes, in this industry, I can tell you about a whole bunch of people who are always willing to offer reasonable and good, the best of their advice, whether they think you're going to do business with them or not, whether they think you can help them or not. And those are the people that we like to focus on. So I agree with you. It's about the people, and it's about focusing on others. Whether I'm a servant leader and focusing on the people in my organization, or I'm just a good friend. And I have to tell you, I've gotten some major opportunities because I was somebody focused on helping somebody else. But I didn't do it with that in mind, and it's now just become, it's habitual. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's all about being habitual, and it's all about focusing on the goal long term instead of focusing on the challenges today of what it takes to get there. So I think you've made some really strong points.
Yeah, and talk about teeing it up. The authentic salesperson, Jason, Mr. Cutter, weigh in. When you first go into a deal, what are the things you look for?
It's fascinating because, just the way my mind works is I look at both sides, right? So if I'm buying something, like yesterday, I was on a couple of demos shopping for one of my clients, like looking for LMS platforms. And then, other parts of my life is on the sales side or helping people. And so I look at both. And I think the part is everyone being rational, right? Which humans are messy and humans are unpredictable and irrational. But, in the M&A world or selling anything, like, is the salesperson or the company selling, are they being rational? Do you like them and do you trust them? Those are important. And then, like, what they're trying to sell, is it valuable? Are they being rational, or are they just irrational because of emotional reasons, right? Like when someone's selling a house for way too much or a business for way too much and they're emotionally attached to it, or are they being reasonable in that? Like I talked to somebody yesterday for LMS, they were trying to sell me and they gave me the price and I'm like, are you serious? Like, really? Do people do this? And she was taken back because, she's on the side of the seller and thinking that they're amazing and everyone should want them and bow down to them. And I'm just like, no, you're crazy. At least in what I'm looking for. And so I think there's also that fit where it's like, it's gotta be a win for everyone. It's gotta be valuable. It's not the money, it's the value. Even if you're buying something, like, is it valuable for me and where I want to go and what I want to accomplish? Like Gary was saying a few minutes ago, right? Like, is this going to help me get to a better place? That's the whole point of when you're selling something to someone else is it valuable? Are they going to benefit? And when you do it from that position, in my experience, if I'm going to help you succeed, then by default, I will win as well if I'm doing my part. And I don't have to play the short-term game, right? I can play the long-term game and know I'm helping you long term, right? It's not about this. Right. And I love that situational ethics kind of moniker because there's a lot of people in that, right? That's one of the things I saw when I was first in sales where, somebody would get off the phone or done with a meeting and I would listen to that meeting and they're like, they seem so relational, like they care so much. And as soon as that meeting is over, the kind of stuff they said about what they were hoping to do to that person with fees and contracts, I was just like, are you serious? Like, that's terrible. Like, what are you, like, is this the game that we're playing? And, so I think yes, those people will make some money short term, but long term, they'll have to change industries. They'll have to change companies. You'll see them fly around. They'll churn and burn relationships.
Yeah.
And so, it's a long term.
I had a lawyer do that to me once. I went to him because his kid went to school with my kid, and so he's from the neighborhood, and he copied me on an email to the partners and the associate that were working my matter, saying, "Hey, I think if we take this approach, it'll get done too fast, and we can take this approach, and it will increase our fees." And I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" So it is exactly what you're talking about, right? It's about focusing on that. But now I'm going to talk out of the other side of my mouth, because the other thing, there are many unsuccessful salespeople who get in their own way because they think they are the protector of the prospect. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference between being a helper and being authentic and being the protector of the client. In fact, my last job, probably one of the reasons I got fired that day, is because we were in the real estate business, and I was running the sales of the leasing organization, and I was also the general counsel. I thought it was my job to protect the clients. It wasn't until I was gone from that business for a couple of years that I realized that my real job was closing the deal, was getting the deal done for both the carrier and the real estate owner, and that I wasn't the lawyer for my clients. I was the broker for my clients. So I had to make the deal successful. I didn't have to protect my clients, who in most cases were Fortune 500 real estate companies with general counsels whose credentials were better than mine. But I didn't understand it, and I got in the way of my own sales process many times.
Well, and you see that too in other sales roles, right? Non-legal attorney mode, where someone's in sales and they default more to order taker mode, right? They're doing what you were saying earlier and what Bob Burke says: people will do business with people they know, like, and trust. And they think that's enough. If I just do that, people will be knocking on my door or handing me cash. And it's like, you have to be that guide and move people forward, instead of, like, I see people go to the other end of the spectrum because they don't want to be Wolf of Wall Street boiler room, because they think that's the only way to win. So they go the other side, which is just nice and friendly and hopeful, and then that fails, and it's a disservice to that person who's potentially trying to buy something as well.
Yeah, I've got a question here for Gary, and because you kind of brought this up earlier, there's the people who kind of sit on the bench. This is a pre-show. We had a little conversation, and I won't steal the thunder. I'll let you say it a little bit more, Gary, but there's the people who sit on the bench, and I'm thinking in my mind, call center rep or team lead, who they wake up in the morning, they get their breakfast ready, they go commute to work, they get to the office, or they work from home, whatever that is. They do their 9-to-5 job. They come home, they unplug, unwind, eat dinner, and watch TV, and that is their day. That's five working days, and then on the weekends, it's finally like, whew, I can kick off my shoes, I can get to hang out with my parents and my friends. Now I'm not talking specifically to those people. I'm talking to people who are in that scenario, who feel like they're in a rut, and they want to do more. Maybe they're a serial entrepreneur, or maybe they're interested in looking at what other opportunities are out there. Maybe being a business owner, maybe researching how to be a CEO, start something from scratch, or buy something and then own something and build something that's already been built upon. What is your experience in, I'll say, at-bats or abilities to go to the plate? Because, you may have to go to the plate 100 times and strike out 100 times before you get that perfect pitch to hit. Or is it a lot easier than that? And, as long as you show up to the plate, you're going to get a strike every third pitch. So you might as well start looking around and trying. So give us a little perspective there.
Wow. Some of my favorite.
Before Gary says this, I want to tell you, Artie, I didn't lay this up for him, Gary. I did not set this up, and I did not even give him the analogy. But the fact that you picked the baseball, Gary and I have had a few really good conversations about baseball. And so, Gary, take it away. I just want to say that was not planned.
Artie, let me address a few things, because you really have teed me up for some of my best cliches. So the first thing is you've never hit a ball that you didn't swing at. Okay. So you need to remember that in baseball, the best players don't even hit the ball and get on base 1 out of 3 times. All right. So we'll start with that. The second thing is I get a lot of people coming to me. They were 6-figure employees. They spent many years at a company, and they now they're looking for a job, and they're coming to me, and I have an amazing leadership team. Now, we've grown so fast. From time to time, I'm willing to part with it. Money, and we've grown to a point now where things are a little changing for me. But one of the things that I explain to people is, again, what we talked about before. When are you going to get off the bench and into the game? What does that mean? The game, to me, is the game of business ownership. Now, there are those people. Remember earlier I was talking about the common denominators of success. So I want to start with this. Everybody's idea of success is different. You don't have to be my friend Jamie Siminoff and get an exit like a Ring.com exit to Amazon to be successful. You can be like any one of the 100 company owners that I have acquired over the years who have run a nice business, put money in your pocket, sell for a reasonably good price, and retire. And that's a good life too. So when I tell people, why don't you get off the bench and into the game, here was part of my experience. When I lost my job and I started the company, I was also doing interviews. And I was interviewing for some jobs that were just way under my skill set. And I was being judged by people knowing I could do the job. I could do the job really, really well. And that's when I realized I had to go into my own business. I had to go into my own business because I was tired of being on that other side of the table. I wanted to be in the table. Nobody is their own boss. Let's make this really clear. Okay? If you're married, you're never your own boss. If you have clients, they're the boss. If you have bankers, they're the boss, right? So it's not about being your own boss. And if you're too fiercely independent, you're never going to be successful either, because then you think, I know better than everybody, and arrogance is a killer. You also said something, Artie, that I think deserves some attention too. You said, well, we are waiting for that perfect pitch. Perfection is the greatest killer of inspiration and innovation. Okay? If you sit around and wait for that perfect pitch and only will swing at the perfect pitch, you're going to get called out on strikes more times than you know. Okay? Now, unless you are Babe Ruth and you can hit enough home runs to overcome the number of strikeouts you're going to do, and most of us are not, then you're better off with singles, doubles, triples, singles, doubles, triples. Work the plan. I mean, look at my fighting Phils. My Phillies are doing exactly that. They had to go there, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't even mention the Eagles, so we're going to keep going. But these are the things that I encourage people to do. You come to me from being in a company making $150,000, and you're in your 40s or your 50s. I tell people that you should anticipate 1 month, and it's not my thing. It's something I stole it from somewhere. In fact, most of the things that you hear me talk about, I've stolen or retooled from someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fact is, the common denominator conversation I stole from an insurance sales guy from the 1940s, okay? This was something that he did at a conference, and I found it on the web somewhere, and it changed my life. Recognizing that success. So I have a younger brother who's one of my greatest inspirations. He runs a business that power washes in Florida, in Orlando, people's houses and their businesses and stuff. He will never be the financial success that his two brothers are. But this kid decided that he wanted to give everything he has to an organization called Optimist International. And a kid with a learning disability, he's 58. He's my kid brother. So 58 years old, he takes on and becomes the governor of the Optimist International Organization for all of Florida, which means the guy who is scared to get up in front of people is giving speeches. He's leading programs, and he got from my father that integrity. So one of the big things is, how many new members do you get? And he and I had a conversation a month ago, and he's like, I want you to donate and become a member, because I won't fake membership. But then you got to, and that's the kind of integrity. So in my opinion, my little brother, who will never be this financial success that I hope to be someday, is the most successful guy I know. So getting out of getting into the game means taking your own destiny, focusing on your own goals, and getting up there. Fred and I have talked about it, because oftentimes I'll bring people in from the contact center industry, and I'll say, here's the deal. I don't want you to steal your old client. That's not okay. But if you can come and bring business with you, I'll work out a deal where we'll be partners. I'll provide the infrastructure. I'll do that. Let's go down that path. You want to be in this business. You want to be in that business, because I have infrastructure, and I don't have butt heads in my life like PE firms and venture capitalists who are telling me what to do. So I do things. I mean, there are lots of things in businesses that I am involved in. In addition, I'm involved in the International Startup Festival in Canada, where 10 of us put up 10 grand a year, and we invest in startup companies that interest us. We invested in this company that is protecting human assets in space, another one that is providing mobile charging, and another one that is taking food that's about to be thrown away and put into dumps. 100 million pounds of food we have kept, because what we do is we have an app, people go on, buy it, and Fred, I didn't say any of their names, but they go on the app and they buy the food, they come in and they pick up their bag, the employees bag it, they come in, they take it home, and now food that would have been in the dump is now in somebody's stomach. That is something that we're really proud of. So it's about finding what motivates you. It's about understanding your why. The Simon Sinek video from the Puget Sound TEDx, which is how TED Talks were really popular. But to me, that Simon Sinek video was one of the things that really created the TEDx movement, because that was one of the greatest ever. What motivates you? What gets you out of bed in the morning? Okay, I admit that I'm Tigger. Okay, I admit that I get up every day and I can't wait to see what the day is going to bring. And I'm able to do that because I swing the bat every day. And when I make a mistake, and I make plenty of them, okay, I make more mistakes than the four of us, the three of you combined, I promise. Okay, I make them, and they're usually very costly, quite frankly. They're usually very expensive mistakes. But the idea is, you gotta get over your fear. You gotta recognize how awesome you are, and you then can make the move. That being said, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner is not for everyone, and therefore you don't have to have the same goal. My brother doesn't dream of great wealth and riches and running with a lot of people. I think he's trying to hire his first or second employee right now. So if you are in Orlando, look up Pudles Pressure Washing. Not what I'm going to do. It's not me. And he needs some people. But what I will tell you is this: find your goal. Find out what it takes to be successful in that. Same thing with a marriage, right? In a marriage, successful marriages mean you are going to do things that successful people and marriages do. You're going to listen to your spouse. You're going to go that extra mile to do that extra chore, not because she makes you, but because you want to have a successful marriage. Same thing at your church or your temple. There are those people who are on the board, who are on their lay, whatever they are, or they're the president of the temple, whatever they are. Find out what your passion is and be the best at that, and do it humbly. As my new friend Lori recently told me, be the best you can be and do it humbly. And that's, that's all part of the plan. So yeah, the baseball analogy is the first one. If you come to me as a human being, as a friend, say, I just lost my job, or I'm going to lose my job, or I hate my job, my first thing to you is, when are you going to get off the bench and into the game? When are you going to stand up and recognize that you have all the tools you need to be successful? You just have to get over your own fear and make sure that you can do that, because there are hundreds of thousands of businesses for sale. They're not sexy. They're not cool. But guess what? They have customers. They have profits. And as long as you don't screw them up, you can get the businesses to pay them for themselves. And if you have that special thing, like all three of you guys are really great sales professionals. You three are really great at helping the people in your universe accomplish what they want to accomplish, particularly in the contact center space. Okay? So that is the kind of thing that's going to motivate you. I know that motivates you, Fred. I mean, I know that and profits, but beyond the profit part.
Well, you need to make money. I mean, come on.
Well, I'm a fat guy. I can't miss a meal, so I get that. But to your point, that to me, that's what I mean by getting into the game and swing the bat, swing it every day, swing it hard.
Guys, I knew this would happen. But I set out multiple questions, but I knew as soon as we got going, we wouldn't even get to the other ones. I haven't even gotten to give my point in the art of the deal. And that's okay. That's all right. I'm good with that. It's part of being last, so most of the time everybody takes my stuff. And I'm good with that. So I want to do a rapid fire. We've got a few minutes left. We try to keep these things to an hour. We always go over, so I'm not fighting that battle. But I want to do a rapid fire on a couple more. So you guys, art of the deal, going in, human, I all those things I agree with. I didn't hear anything that was really missing, so I won't add anything. Second question was, when you're in the middle of a deal, when do you walk away? And let's just do rapid fire. Keep it short, succinct. Gary, when do you walk away from a deal?
Number one, when the person you're dealing with lies to you.
Oh, yeah. Okay?
Somebody lies to you, walk away. Because if they're going to lie to you once, they're going to lie to you twice. And number two, when that's the biggest thing for me. And number two, when the person becomes unreasonable. We talked about it earlier. When that person, if somebody wants to do a transaction with you, they're going to price it right and they're going to stick by their word. There are certain people who believe that after you sign the deal, that's when the time to negotiate actually happens. Anybody who does that is no good in my book. I'm out. So those are the things that make me walk. Yeah.
Fair enough. Artie, when do you walk away?
Time kills all deals. If you sense that the other person you're dealing with is dragging their feet, they're dragging their feet for a reason. And that, I guess that is, goes to Gary's point. They're hiding something. They're lying about something. They don't have a trust in you. There should be a timeline that you set in the beginning. And if you go a little bit over that timeline, that's okay, as both sides agree to it. But it should be a very clear, let's get this done in X amount of time, maybe 1 year, 3 months, whatever that time frame is. And then as you quickly approach that time frame, if there's people who are purposely dragging their feet or pulling legal stuff on you just to keep the deal going longer, just back out. It's not worth it.
Okay. Jason, when do you walk?
From a buying perspective, it's one of two categories. One is when there's a lot of pressure that feels like gross sales tactics and manipulation, where somebody wants the deal so bad. That's usually a sign that something's up. Either it's a really bad deal or it's benefiting them and not you. And then from the buyer side, also it's timing, and really from the sales side, it's the urgency and the timing. Right? You go through your process, and if somebody really doesn't want whatever you're selling, and they're not going to move forward, you can't make them. Right? It's the lead the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Like, you can't do it all for them, and you can't force them to do it, which is what a lot of salespeople do. And so they've got to meet you most of the way there, because it's for them, whatever they're trying to buy.
Okay. All of them
And how
agree.
about you, Fred? When do you walk away?
Fred, what do you think?
When do I walk away? I mean, I think, first of all, you guys know me, the personal connection, relationship, trust, honesty, integrity, any whiff of that going awry, I'll ask hard questions. And if the answers, I mean, people, you guys know this. Again, we've said this a million times on the cast. Humans are messy. Stuff happens. They're getting pressure from people. They've got pressure from their external life. I'm willing to allow people to go through whatever they need to. But there's a difference between, going through that stuff and then being able to come back and say, look, you're right. Here's what's going on. I can understand that. What I can't understand is when, no, nothing's going on. Everything's good. We just need to, that's when it's time to walk away. It's in the end, stuff happens in life. People make decisions that are based upon whatever, their drivers are, whatever's going on in their life, in their head. I own my stuff. I can only control what I say, do, and think. And think is only partial control, right? Because there's the whole id. But yeah, that's the number one driver. If there's anything within that path of integrity and, the work, and they can't come back and take ownership of their own mistakes, I'm out, no matter what the deal is. I've just gotten to the stage. When I was young, I didn't have that luxury. Now, if there's not that integrity piece and people don't take ownership of their own shit, I have no time. I just don't want to surround myself with people that don't at least take that piece of ownership. We all make mistakes, but anyways, so that's me. That's when I walk. It's a simple guide. Then it goes down to the numbers, right? Everything's fundamental. You got to do your research. You got to understand what you're buying into or selling into. You got to help the other person. You guys have all said the points, so I keep it pretty simple. And the last one, another rapid fire. So you've gone through the process. You built the trust. You built the rapport. You've got everything validated. You feel like it's a great fit. What have you guys found in your life at the closing stage? What are the things that really get it past the finish line? Jason, let's start with you on this one.
Good, because I was going to write down my thoughts so I didn't forget. I think the biggest thing is I always look for people I'm buying from to set the right expectations. And from a sales perspective, my goal is to always help people set the right expectations, because the fundamental thing is nothing that's being bought or sold is perfect in every way, right? Like money, time, and speed. You have 2 out of the 3, but not all 3, right? And so there's always a flaw. Either something's expensive because it's high quality, right? You just can't have the good, fast, and cheap. So I think the biggest thing I look for is someone setting expectations. You're going to buy this software. It's going to be hard. This onboarding is difficult, and then it's amazing. Or we'll do it all for you, but it's crazy ass expensive, but that's the trade-off. I want to know the downsides because everything has a trade-off. And then that makes me feel like I can trust them because they're not hiding anything.
You went to the project manager's triangle, price, quality, speed, right? That's you can only have 2 out of the 3 at any given time, and you got to pick which ones are valuable to you.
And so many people in sales want to ignore the things that are the negative trade-offs, right? Like you're signing up for this program, but it's going to be a monthly subscription and it's hard to cancel. Like people will find that out and then they'll be mad and they'll feel like you lied to them or misled them later. And instead, let's just talk about it now, because if it's a good fit, it's a good fit.
Yeah, but don't talk about that too early, because
towards the end,
you got to build trust, rapport. You got to make sure you can have that conversation without them having the knee-jerk reaction of what the hell is this guy talking about? I'm out of here. Artie, at the end, what do you?
Whether or not you're buying something, so I'm the buyer, I'm buying something, or I'm the seller selling something, it's all about internally combating the potential for buyer's remorse or seller's remorse. Did I make the right decision? So it's all about the future thought. Like, if I sign this contract, am I signing my life away? Did I just give up my organization, my baby, my business? I've owned it for my whole 10 years of career. This is my life. This is my net worth boiled down to a dollar amount. And then having that remorse. Did I make the right decision? Can I back out? All of those things. You have to combat those. I think Gary hits a couple of different points that he said. The one benefit that we all have is time. If you make a mistake, which we're human, we all make mistakes. Instead of having that remorse, look forward as opposed to looking behind you. A great phrase is, God gave us eyes in front of our heads to keep looking forward and not look back. Because if we kept looking back, we would never be able to drive forward as a person. So it's always good to think about what can you do, even if you inherited a horrible thing. It's almost like buying a horrible car. You've got that car, make something good of it, maybe make it better and then resell it, or spend your time and energy looking at the positive things of what you just purchased. So that's buyer's remorse, seller's remorse. I would say that's the number one killer of deals at the end, is whoever's signing that contract, whether they're on the selling side or on the buying side, is the, like in 3 weeks, am I going to regret me signing this contract? You just got to get past that and remember, this is going to be one of many conversations and one of many contracts in your future. Time is on your side, and get through that. I think that's the biggest killer of deals at the last minute.
Okay. Gary, last minute, what are the things you do to get it past the finish line?
Just be honest and communicate expectations on both sides, whether you're a buyer or a seller. Don't leave things unsaid. One of the problems we have is we're afraid to have tough conversations. Salespeople are people pleasers. I'm a people pleaser. Having tough conversations can often kill a deal, but it's better to have the tough conversation than let the deal die than leave something unsaid and create a significant and real problem.
Yeah. So, I look at, if you've done your job up front, you've found out what their problem is, you're solving it in some way. They've admitted, you found out they had a problem and they admitted they have the problem and recognize it. And they've admitted and recognized that your product will solve that problem. When it comes down to the end, when all the checks, all the boxes are checked, in my opinion, really, it's like you said, Gary. It's just, just have an open conversation about, that. And you should know, and Jason knows, Jason teaches this stuff, you should know their timeline already. You should know all of the details, and you should have proven out those facts that, they have that problem, you solve it, everybody agrees, we're ready to move forward. Then it's just a matter of saying, okay, let's move forward. Okay, if not, what's it going to take? What happened? What changed? Have an honest conversation, and don't let the emotional piece. One thing I found in any deal throughout the entire cycle is the better you get at controlling your emotions and just having candid human conversations with people and asking tough questions and listening, and the better the end of the deal becomes really simple if you do all that stuff throughout the process. So I think the one thing we all haven't mentioned, and I'm surprised you didn't, Gary, because sometimes it's about getting it done fast. Sometimes deals will die if you let it go very far. When you've established all those things, they have a problem, you solve it, everybody admits it, get the deal done. Don't be afraid to ask to move it forward. Now, sometimes those things haven't happened and you can't move it forward without those, because then you get the buyer's remorse afterwards, or if you push too fast, people cancel afterwards because they didn't really believe, or you hadn't solved their problem or proved that you will. But yeah, in the end, there's no tricks of the trade. I remember being taught closing skills. That stuff is such old school, kind of slimy. But there is one piece. You got to ask for the deal still. You still have to ask for it. Yeah, it's just there's a better way to ask. And if you did your job as a professional you already have established all those things ahead of time. So that's me. So we're like way over now, guys, as I kind of anticipated. And I warned you all watching, somewhere like halfway in between this. So with that being said, Gary, appreciate it, brother. Thank you for coming on, dude. Love you sharing your insights, and love you, man. I
love you back, and Jason and Artie, our first time getting to actually spend some real time together, and I thought I was going to hang out with you, Jason, and watch a game, but I guess we went in different ways. But I will say this was an absolute pleasure, and I'll sell with you guys anytime. Okay.
Awesome. All right, guys. From Jason, Artie, and I, thank you again to all the audience. Share this content. Love to hear from you. Any feedback, we're always open. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks on the next Origins and Journeys. Thanks, guys. Take care.